Hi, this is Vicki. Welcome back to another edition of Crafting for Fun. Today I want to show you how I made this easy and elegant card using a die from the Rose Garden die set by Stampin' Up! Now we have made a card similar to this. It was my Rose Garden card number 1, and I'll show you that card. The difference between these two cards is with the Rose Garden card number 1 card, the space over here and the rows were all cut out together and then pieced back, cut together from the same piece of paper and then pieced back together. And in this case, we are going to cut the rows out separately and then cut this darker matte piece by hand just to layer underneath. So two different ways to achieve a similar look. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the Rose Garden card number 1, and I used my die cutting machine to cut both the flower and this piece that goes to the right hand side of the flower where I stamped my sentiment. So this card looks very similar to this card, but they were created completely differently. On this card I have a vanilla colored card base. I cut the flower image out and then I cut the brown matte to layer behind. So this will all become much clearer when I show you how to assemble this card. Both cards are very easy to assemble and both are just lovely. They're just made entirely differently. So let me gather my supplies and I'll show you what you need to make this card. To create today's card, you'll need the following items. You'll need a piece of cardstock for your card base. I suggest a light color, like very vanilla. This piece is 11 inches long by 4 1/4 inches wide and has been scored in the center at 5 1/2 inches. You'll need a piece of dark colored cardstock to contrast. I'm using Early Espresso, which is a very deep dark brown, and this piece measures 4 by 5 1/4. In addition to that, you'll need about 1/4 of a sheet of the same color cardstock as your base. This piece measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches and it's very vanilla. I'm going to be using the Rose Wonder bundle, which includes the Rose Garden die set, which we've used before, and I'm going to be using this die to create my focal image. And I'm going to be using a stamp from the Rose Wonder stamp set. So together these are called the Rose Wonder bundle, and I'm going to use this with Sympathy stamp. You could use any deeply etched die as your focal image. You would just have to adjust your card accordingly, and you could use any good sentiment stamp set that you might have. I'm going to be using an ink color to match my dark colored cardstock, so this is Early Espresso ink, and I have my stamp on a stamp block. In addition to this, you're going to need a very good pair of sharp scissors. These are Cutter Bees, and they're very, very good and sharp scissors. And then I'm using a white gel pen. You'll need some kind of a pen or marker that can contrast very highly with your dark paper. And then you'll need some adhesives. I'm going to be using just my regular Tombow double-sided tape runner, and then I'm going to use a little bit of this multi-matte medium. It's by Ranger, and the thing that I love about this is when it dries without a shine. So if you should happen to get a little glue on your project, it doesn't leave that really shiny residue that makes it look so yucky. In addition to that, I'm going to be using my Sizzix die brush, which is this die for getting really detailed images to come cleanly out of the die, and I'm going to use my Sizzix Big Shot machine, and I am going to use mine with a precision base plate, but you could use whatever tools you have to work with your Sizzix. So let me get set up and I'll show you how we're going to make this card. I'm going to begin by setting up my Sizzix Big Shot machine. I'm using mine with a magnetic platform and the precision base plate. So I have those two stacked on top of each other, and since the precision base plate replaces one of my clear cutting pads, I only need one additional pad. If you're using the multi-purpose platform that comes with the machine, you'll need the multi-purpose platform with all tabs closed, and you'll need 2 cutting pads. So I'm going to begin by using my vanilla colored cardstock, and I'm going to use my vanilla colored cardstock, and I'm going to cut out my rose image. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out by putting the clear plastic acrylic plate on top. running it through, and then I'm going to run it back. And then I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to sit it on top of my the pad that comes with my Sizzix die brush, and I'm just going to run the die brush over all of this rose here, and that should loosen up all of those pieces so they come cleanly out of the die. I've had very, very good success with this, so there's no pieces left inside of my die. My die is nice and clean, and there might be a few extra pieces that are stuck in there, and if there are, I just give them a flick and they usually come right out. So there is my beautiful rose cut out of the white, or the very vanilla, I'm sorry. And so what I want to do now is I'm just going to use this as a platform to work on, and I'm going to bring my Early Espresso piece here, and I'm going to lay it here on my, what I want to do is this is with my blade side down on my die, and this is how I want my actual die to be positioned whenever, or my die cut image to be positioned whenever I'm finished. But what I want to do is with that down like that, the blade side down on the espresso paper, then I want to take it to the back side. So I actually want the blades to be facing up, and I want to orient it on this paper so that I have one leaf touching the top and the other leaf touching the bottom at opposite corners. And I'm kind of leaving a little bit of space. I want to stamp a sentiment there, so I'm trying to decide. I want to make sure that my rose does not extend off of the edge of the card there. So I'm going to go ahead and take my white gel pen now. So my blade side is up. I have it positioned where I want, with the leaf at the top and the leaf at the bottom kind of at a diagonal, and almost touching and almost touching, and my rose is completely in on the side. Now remember, this is the back side of our project, so I don't have to be fantastically good at tracing, but I do need to trace right around this image because I'm going to be cutting this to create a line for the shadow image on the front of my card. Now what you have to remember is that the die does not cut all the way to the edge, so there's a little bit of distance between the edge of the die and where it actually cuts the image, and then we're going to cut on the outside of that as well, so we'll have a little shadow border around, and that will all make much more sense when I get finished cutting here. So now I have my piece, it's all drawn around, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut. And for this, I am going to try to move my scissors more and my paper less so I get a nice smooth cut. You don't want to make a lot of choppy little cuts on this because the edge does show. And I'm cutting very close to, but just outside of that white line as much as possible. And I am not a fantastic fussy cutter. I'm just going to chop that off to make it a little easier for me. Fussy cutting is not one of my favorite things to do. You'll notice that almost always, if I can get away with using a die to do something, I do so. But I think this technique is worth the extra added effort on my part. There we go, and I just have a little snip that I want to make right there. There we go. So when I turn it over, I don't see any of those marks that I made, and I have a relatively smooth cut. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring my base card back in. I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to grab my bone folder so I can burnish that crease really well. Then I'm going to actually adhere this down on my card, and I'm going to leave about the same amount of space on the side as I do on the bottom, and roughly at the top as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put some adhesive on that. And I'm just using Tombow double-sided tape. Whoops. Go ahead and tape that down. Okay. Now I do want to stamp my image, my sentiment, and I have a With Sympathy sentiment that should just barely fit there. So I'm going to ink up my sentiment and try to get that right. Where it needs to be. I'm going to apply even pressure and wait about 4 to 5 seconds for my ink to transfer completely. And there we go. We have a beautiful stamped image. And now I need to glue my rose down. And what I'm actually going to do is adhere my rose so that I have a slight edge of brown showing around it. I need to give a shout out to my young viewer, Leah. Leah is an awesome crafter. I think she's in the 5th grade now, and she does an amazing job, and she actually suggested that I try using this multi-matte medium so that I didn't get a shine if any of it squished out, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. She is very, very familiar with the current craft products, and she crafts all the time, both alone and with her mom, who is wonderfully supportive. And so I told her that I was so impressed with her idea that I was going to give her a shout out in this video. So there you go, Leah. Anyway, I am not putting glue all over the back of this rose. I am just putting it, little dots of it, especially where there are larger places, like for example if several lines meet together and there's like a larger space. I'm putting like a little dot about the size of like the head of a pen maybe, and I'm just doing them all over. This is a very, very strong glue, and if you have just a few dots of it on the tips of your leaves and maybe a few on the stem, it will hold it securely in place. So I don't worry about this coming up when I have it down. It is not an instant or a quick drying glue. It does take a little while to dry, but when it does, it is permanent. So I love this product. I have a precision tip that I've added to it to allow me to get into even smaller areas. And I am just about done here with my adding glue. And like I said, if a little bit squishes out, it won't show because it will dry completely matte. Okay, so I'm going to put this in. I'm going to try to get it as close to where I want it before I set it down. And then I just pat it into place. Kind of give it a little press. And this could really benefit from having something heavy on top of it until it's completely dry. That way it dries completely smushed down, but I haven't had any problem at all. So there we go. What a quick and simple card. And I think it's just stunning. It makes a lovely sympathy card. I just need to stamp a little bit of inside sentiment in this, and I would have the perfect card to send for the occasion. So if you're looking for a beautiful but quick card to make using your Rose Garden die, I suggest that you give this a try. And if you have success making this card with another intricate die, I wish you would link back to me on my blog or send me an email and let me see what you've done. So if you have any questions, please contact me at craftingforfun@gmail.com or check out my blog, craftingforfun@blogspot.com for other craft ideas. Hope to see you back here soon.